Let's try.
Okay, David, we're going to get started, and we are notorious for talking amongst ourselves when we start, so we're going to be quiet for a minute.
Are we live? Okay, we're live.
Oh, we are?
Go to Zoom.
Okay,
we're live. Go to
okay.
gallery view.
And I just shared it too.
Just
So
gonna wait a second. Are
Okay.
we going? Thank you.
Okay, good. You seem like you know what you're doing.
We have
That's
a couple
awesome.
minutes.
Well, it says it's on live, so
Okay, we're just gonna wait for 1 minute. Make sure we've got everybody. Good. Okay, credit, you got that good?
yeah, I think so.
Oh, Facebook Livers, we're slowly getting better.
Hey, we can't be pros at everything, right?
Can't be good at everything. Master of none.
Okay.
You wanna go?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go.
All right, guys. Well, happy Sunday. Welcome to the Freedom Exchange.
I'm going to check on Facebook, make sure we're good.
Okay. Okay. Tonight we have an awesome guest that we feel really fortunate to have you tonight, David. You were on our list for a long time, and we were so glad that we could make this happen with your crazy busy schedule that we'll get into. But welcome everybody to the Freedom Exchange, and want to tell what we're about?
Oh, yeah. Hi guys. The Freedom Exchange was started so that we could create a platform for people who have been impacted by we're not calling it criminal justice system anymore. What are we calling it? The legal system. Right, David?
yeah, the criminal legal system.
Criminal legal system. That sits so much better with me. I love that. And so Allison and I know that telling stories, our own true stories about our life and experiences and exchanging stories with other people is such a healing process, and it helps bridge communities, people in prison, people who've never been in prison, people who have family members in, people that want to fight for them, people that don't understand what the big deal is because they don't know the injustices that go on. So we started this, and we're super happy, like Allison said, to have you on here with us, David.
So welcome to David Garlock. Where are you right now, David?
I am in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and it's 8 o'clock here.
Ooh.
And he's had a busy, long day, so we're so grateful that you're here. And tell us about Guy Joshua.
Guy Joshua is my son. He's almost 6 months old. And when I talk to people, I tell them that he is what a second chance looks like, because I've been out of prison for just over 8 years. And my sentence ends October 27th, 2024. So I could still potentially be in prison to this day. Mm-hmm. But because I was blessed with the opportunity to make parole, and I met a wonderful woman, and we got married, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 6-year anniversary on August 15th. Wow. And we have Guy Joshua. So he's a blessing.
He's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You are so sweet with him. I like when I talked to you last time and you said, we're having a guys weekend when your wife was away.
Yeah.
I mean, your whole life you're going to say that. It's a guy's weekend.
No doubt.
Until you have a daughter, and then
you
have to figure that one out.
Yeah, my wife already has her name, so we're just waiting for when she comes along.
That's sweet. That's
awesome.
Yay. Well, you said that you've been out just over 8 years.
Yeah, so I actually was released April 1st, 2013. So just imagine getting out of prison on April Fool's Day. There were actually 2 officers that were joking around, and they're like, Garlock, your paperwork hasn't come in, so you can't go home. And I mean, I love to joke around. I love to have fun and everything because I'm this like extroverted, fun, outgoing person. But I'm like, my freedom is not something I want to joke around with. They're
there's
like,
no
okay,
joking.
Get up out of here. And I was
like too soon. Like what comes before too soon?
Yeah, that's
like
way.
We're not joking about it yet. It's
Let me get out and close and lock the door.
Are you one of those people that the day of you kind of ran out the door, or like you just wanted to get out that door as fast as possible?
I mean, what was always interesting is I had positions where I actually had been outside the prison. So I had custody. So one job I had, we mowed the lawn around the prison, you know. So that was something that was always weird because it took us a whole week to like work our way around the whole prison. And the next week we'd do it again, you know. But you know, it was always surreal, like getting out and walking out the prison gates, you know, like you get some semblance of freedom, but then you have to come back in. And at the prison that I was released from, I actually worked in the hospital. So I did hospice work and I was a runner for the nurses. And I actually, next door to us, this was Hamilton Asian Affirmed. So it was for all of the older individuals, typically 55 and older. And so across the street was the hospital. So I actually had to wheel in the wheelchair. I pushed one of the other incarcerated people over there and took him into the hospital, put him on the thing. And then I went out and I'm just sitting in the lobby. I'm in my prison whites and I'm just sitting in the lobby. I'm thinking, man, this is so weird. I'm here in the just like in my prison whites in the lobby of this hospital, just waiting for this other guy.
That sounds strange. And was there ever a moment where you're like, ugh, it would be so nice to just go out and get a Dairy Queen?
I mean, actually, what was very interesting about this one prison is this is the only prison that is in Alabama that's like actually in the middle of a city. So there was a Burger King right next to us, and that was torture. Because just imagine having all these like Whopper smells coming, and then you know, that you have to go into the chow hall and eat this thing they call a meat patty, but it had like pieces of tendon and everything else in it. So yeah, it was not good.
You don't even know what that does.
She's
to
the
me.
worst at that.
I'm like a psychological.
You would have lost so much weight.
I would have lost a lot of weight in prison.
I was 165 pounds when I got out of prison. I was benching 300 pounds, squatting 500.
Why not?
People are like, wait, how is that even possible? I'm like, I couldn't put any weight on, you know, but I was able to just like be able to lift all that weight, you know, and people are like, there's no way. I'm like, okay.
And then what's your exercise thing now? Like
taking care of Guy Joshua.
Well, and you know what else I find the little interesting line there is you did hospice work, and some of that work is probably similar to what you're doing with your own baby now, but maybe not as hard or not as you like it more probably. Well, I don't know, you might have liked the hospice work too.
I mean, I actually love the hospice work. You know, it was probably some of the hardest work that I did while I was incarcerated, but also some of the best work, you know, because I did it for 3 years, and the individuals that we took care of, you know, we became their surrogate family, you know, so we were able to just love on them, you know, and minister to them and help them out, you know, as they were dying in prison. You know, a lot of these folks had life sentences or life without parole, but they were paralyzed, you know, they couldn't do anything. If they were released, they could have never committed another offense, you know, but the Alabama Department of Corrections wouldn't want to release them. They said, okay, you're going to die in prison because that's what your sentence said. And we had one instance where we were helping the nurse change this gentleman's diaper, you know, and we had rolled him over and he died in our arms. It's like, what in the world? You know, this person could have been out spending his last weeks or months or years with his family, but they wanted him to experience the full totality of that punishment and that sentence that they gave them.
That goes so wrong. I mean, the compassion piece, the humanity piece is so wrong, let alone if you want to be like, I don't know, fiscally responsible. That just seems silly to I know what it costs to keep somebody incarcerated. It just seems, but the compassion, humanity piece of that is rough.
Especially when you hear about people that like the family members or the victims family has since forgiven and they've reconciled and have a lot of times a beautiful relationship. Like I know you're going to be talking to Ian coming up, and a story like that, it's like, who gets to decide if the victim's family members, have compassion. There's so many layers to every story. And so
that's
so
what
hard.
we can't maybe change that all, right? My heart is that we bring awareness to these stories, and we bring awareness to, there's other options, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There are other options than sentencing and throwing away the key so that they, experience the full, punishment of what it's just. We'll talk about that. But I want to get into, there's so many things with you, David. There's so many things, but I wanted to get into what you've been doing the last 8 years, because you are a busy man.
Yeah, I mean, when I first was released, I just got a job at a restaurant. Actually, the first job I had for 1 day and 2 hours. And I was actually fired because of my offense, and it being violent of nature, and I found out later that it wasn't the company, and the general manager actually told me that it was company policy that she couldn't allow somebody with a violent offense to work there, but it turned out to be her own issues and junk. So what's important for people to know is that we not only have to deal with companies and their biases, but we all actually have to deal with general managers, anybody in the hiring process, and their own issues and thought processes around people who have a background. So the thing where people always say, oh, just get out of prison, get a job, get a place, go to school. Yeah, it's not that easy. I wish it was, and I mean, the organizations that are doing reentry work, they're amazing. And that's really where we need to focus a lot more attention to allow the transition from prison to society to be a lot smoother. But I was in Alabama for about 9 months, and then I was able to get my parole transferred from Alabama to Pennsylvania, and I attended Eastern University. And the reason I was able to connect with Eastern University is because Brian Stevenson of Equal Justice Initiative started working with my brother and me in 2008. And probably the second or third visit, he told me about Eastern. And I mean, once he told me about it, Eastern's a Christian university. So I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. But then I got the flyer from them, and it said that they had a prison ministry and a street ministry. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. There's a lot of Christian colleges that say they're about a certain thing, but they don't have their feet on the ground and doing the work, and I saw that Eastern was a school that was like that was doing the actual work. And then when I got up there, they put my testimony in the school paper the second week I was there. I was excited about this up until the day it happened, and I wanted to go to school, grab all the papers, like run somewhere and hide, because it's like everybody's going to know everything about me.
Exposure.
But it was so amazing, so many people everybody was so receptive and loving, and it was an amazing opportunity. People had come up to me who had been sexually and physically abused, and they had never shared it with anybody, but they felt comfortable and empowered to share it with me. I had other people who had family members who were just getting out of prison. They're like, hey, can you help me set up a reentry plan? And so it opens so many different opportunities. And not only the students, but also the faculty and the staff just accepted me and loved on me. And I was able to major in urban studies, focusing on criminal justice and social welfare.
That's
You
amazing.
say that 5 times fast?
I just
That was
want to
great.
interject.
That was
So good. I just want to interject that you had a choice when you knew that people were going to find out more about you. And also you had a choice when you got out to go into this work and to lean into your experience, or to decide to distance yourself from it because it was just painful or triggering, or you just, so what do you think it was about you that chose to lean into it versus what a lot of other people might choose?
A lot of it is, the healing that I've been able to experience, and it's kind of like this, there you have two different people, they have the same cut, one person's cut hasn't healed, the other person has a scar. So that person that hasn't healed, they have a scab over that cut. Every time that scab gets hit, it starts to bleed again, and there's different things that trigger people to have that pain, But the other person is an individual who has the scar, the wound was there, but it's been healed. No matter how many times you hit that scar, it's not going to bleed again. but that score reminds the person of what they experienced, the pain, the hurt. But now they're able to show other people that score and say, hey, this is where you can get. And so that's why I do what I do, because of the healing I've been able to experience. I want to take it and to help other people experience the same thing. One of my favorite passages in the Bible is 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. It says that God is a God of all comforts and tender mercies, and he comforts us so we comfort others, and because I have that scar, I'm able to help others, and to help them receive that healing where they can move on, and it's a process, just because somebody comes up and says, hey, this happened to me when I was 8 years old. It's not like everything's perfect and they can go this, but I tell them that, you took the first step today. Now it's time to go seek a counselor, where you can work through this and begin the healing process, and it's so powerful, and amazing when these individuals come up and share their story, because I don't know, when I go somewhere and speak, I don't know who's going to come up. I don't know who's going to be impacted or what, but it seems like every time at least one person comes up and they're like, this is what happened to me. And I'm like, okay, you are why I was here, and that's the thing, if I can help one person anytime I speak, like if one person can be helped tonight, it's worth it. It's worth me being able to just share those experiences, because it's the ripple effect. If I impact one person, that person impacts other people, and thousands and millions of people are impacted.
Right, we do. And I think it's vital what you said. Time doesn't heal all wounds. You need to do the work. You need to lean into it. You need to go there and accept some things, and you can't just wait for it to pass. It's not going to. And so when you encourage counseling or sharing, bringing light to the dark places inside, that's really important. They go hand in hand. It's not one or, you have to do both.
Yeah. And it's really about judgment. Once you get a little more comfortable with yourself and love yourself, to say, wow, this is what happens. And you start to do a little bit of work in yourself, then judgment breaks off, and then you're not, it's interesting. It always shocks me how much people that I meet, including myself, that tell their story, and then I rarely, if at all, get negative feedback. It's always just positive after, helping one person. And even when someone comes up to me, or I'm sure to you, and says something that it's helping them, or tells you a little secret about them, it's just this love connection that just is so powerful and keeps you going. I'm sure doing it, again and again, knowing that someone just shared a little bit of their shameful experience,
And that's this, the judgment's one part of it, but the second part is, you just said it, that shameful experience, and I really didn't know about the shameful aspect of it until I was in a behavior modification program. I was probably in prison. I'd probably been arrested like 2 years, I'd already had an encounter with God that really changed my whole trajectory. And so here I am in this behavior modification program, and I'm reading these self-help books, and I come across one that's dealing with childhood sexual abuse. And in reading it, it was talking about the shame and how somebody who's been abused as a child blames themselves for the abuse. And it was just like this aha moment that's like, wow, I have to forgive myself. Yeah. I wasn't the reason that this happened to me. And people blame themselves, and they have that shame, and it just causes them to just take everything in, internalize everything. And then they begin wearing masks, like when I was a kid, I had like 5 or 6 different masks, I had learned how to act by being abused, because I had to act differently around my friends at church and my friends at school, my family, because if anybody knew, there was a chance that me, my brother, my family could end up dead, because that's the threats that we were told when the abuse began.
Wow.
This seems like a really perfect segue. Do you want to share whatever part of your story you want to share?
Do we have like 20 hours? No.
I know it's hard to wrap it up.
You are a pro. You are a pro with this. So I know you have the little version.
Yeah, so my brother and I, we were sexually and physically abused for 8 years. It started when I was 11. My brother was 13. And it was a non-family member. This individual had just gotten out of prison in North Carolina and moved to Washington, befriended the people that were running a receiving home or a group home where my brother was staying. And that's when it began, And so this progressively got worse from just the sexual abuse to physical abuse. And this individual had tried to kill my brother and me numerous times, and we made an irrational decision to take his life. So I was 19, my brother was 22, and it took him 4 months for us to be arrested, and this was probably the worst 4 months of my life, because here I am with the thought that I had taken somebody's life. And so I just used this time where I was drunk, I was high, or I was drunk and high. That was the only way I could cope with this, because I couldn't tell anybody. If I told somebody, I was going to get arrested and go to prison. October 29th, 1999. I just turned 20 on October 5th, and it's a Friday night, 9 o'clock. I was supposed to get off at 10 o'clock, but they came at 9 o'clock and wanted to take me for questioning. So I went in. At 1 a.m., I was booked into the county jail on a murder charge. That weekend was the hardest time of my life, because here I am. I'm in Alabama. I'm thinking I'm going to get the death penalty. I'm going to get life without parole. When my life is beginning, it's ending, And so I cried myself to sleep the whole weekend. And November 1st, 1999, the detective came back at 8 a.m., took me over to the city jail for more questioning. I'm sat in a room by myself, a 5x7 room by myself for 7 hours. Just think about like a room by yourself, 7 hours, table, chair, that's it, And so I was thinking about the murder. I was thinking about the abuse. I was thinking about everything that transpired. And I finally decided to confess. So I confessed, and it was like this weight that was taken off my chest. This was the first time that I was able to tell somebody everything that had happened to my brother and me, So for these 9 years, I had all this stuff just like weighing me down. And so that was the initial like relief, and weight off my chest. And so the detective handcuffed me in front, put me in the front seat of his cop car, and we were headed back to the county jail. I turned to him, I'm like, am I going to get the death penalty? Am I going to get life without parole? He turns to me, he's like, do you believe in God? I'm thinking, I'm not studying God right now. What's going to happen to me? But he asked me a couple more times. He's like, do you believe in God? I'm like, yeah, I believe in God. He's like, you need to seek him now. So when I got back to the county jail, I asked for a Bible, and they gave me a little New Testament Bible. And so, I grew up in the church. I knew what to say, how to say it. I was like good Sunday school boy, that knew everything, Jesus wept. Yes, that's a script. But then I started reading in Revelations. I skipped everything and went to the end of the book. And
what's going to happen, right?
I came to Revelations 3:20 that says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door and allows me to come in, I will come in and sup with him and he with me. And I just cried out to God. I'm like, God, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the sentence I'm going to get, etc. But I need you. And just instantaneously, this peace and joy came over me. And here I am in my cell. I'm singing and dancing. I'm worshiping God. I'm singing songs that I sang in youth group, just worshiping, and that fear, all that anxiety, everything was gone. And I knew that everything was going to be okay. And I served my brother and I, we got 25-year sentences. We had court-appointed lawyers that really didn't want to do anything for us except get us a 25-year sentence, and that could be a whole nother.
Right. That's the whole conversation.
Just think about that for a second. 25 years as a young man who's been abused, and that's.
And didn't you say you kind of tried to make an appeal to the judge? There was
Yeah, so there was in Alabama, they have a thing called youthful offender status. And so offense happens, you can put in for this. And I had to fight my court-appointed lawyer tooth and nail to get him to put in for this. And so he finally put in for it. I go before the judge. This is Judge Brotherton in Alabama. And he pleads my case. The judge denies the motion, and he looks at me and he laughs. He says, "Rehabilitation is a 70-year-old joke." I was like, "Oh wow,
Mm,
I know I am in trouble now." Yeah. And so, I mean, if you've seen the movie Just Mercy, that's one of my lines in it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing that was amazing about like that, since I just brought that up, is that me and three other clients of Brian Stevenson's were in that movie. He wanted us to play these roles instead of having four actors, because we had the lived experience, and the lines that we have in the movie are our own story. They weren't scripted lines, they were our own story in
Wow.
the movie.
I just watched it the other night with my daughter, and mostly because I mean, the story is good and she thinks the actors are cute, but I wanted to show her you and just how it was cool. And I said, those are not actors, those are not actors. Those are people that are experiencing this right now. And it was powerful. It was, before we move, I just want to say one thing. We hear you're only as sick as your secrets. And one thing that's so powerful that is true to all of us, I think, is when we, like the mask you said, when we share the thing finally and we bring it into the light. You had said to me last time we talked that that's when freedom first started entering for you. And it's so counterintuitive to thinking about, you might be getting this life sentence or you don't know what you're going to get, but there was peace. It's that peace that surpasses all understanding. When you're honest and you bring it into the light, the gift that comes from that, but you don't think it in the moment. And it takes a lot of strength and courage to go there and say, I'm just going to put it out there. This is what we did. And you got freedom from that heading into prison. I think that's powerful.
And there's so many people, just think about the massive amounts of people in the world that aren't in prison, that maybe have done something or something happened to them or they experienced that they are not telling. And and the consequences, the risk of saying it isn't going to be prison. That's the same with me. I had a spiritual experience like that too. And they said, if you're honest, you can get 20 years. And I thought, oh man, I was just talking to God about being honest. And so now what? And, you have to make that decision. I said, I'm going to do it. And then you get this peace. And then, so I understand that. And that's part of why we do this, because to be in a prison and make that decision to confess, at that huge high risk and all these years. And now you're out here talking to us, being an amazing dad and advocate for people. It's the coolest thing ever.
Something really, unless you want to interject something, but something
Yeah. I was just going to read something real quickly. This is something I wrote January. Have you ever looked in the mirror and not known the person who was looking at you? This is how my life was as a kid. I didn't know who I was. The abuse I endured didn't allow me to be me. To survive, I had to create masks and personas. They were used to hide the hurt, pain, and loss. My friends, if that is what you would call them, knew nothing. I had to keep everyone at a distance so my family and I weren't killed. It was only when I was arrested for taking the life of our abuser that I was able to open up and talk about what happened to me. A weight was taken off of my chest. Each mask was able to be destroyed because I no longer had to hide. I could open up and share about the loss of my childhood and innocence. This began to empower me, and I could recognize the person in the mirror. No longer was it a stranger, but it was me.
Love it.
It's powerful.
So beautiful. You can just sit with that for like a half an hour and let all that just really soak in.
And I wish it wasn't just, when you read that, it's like my heart would be that people would absorb it, that they would let it soak in and say, how is that me? Where am I hiding? What are my masks? I mean, we all have them. We could admit it or not, but we all have them. And to know that the freedom can come when you first acknowledge them and then you start making efforts to take them off and release them. And it's not just pretty words that you wrote. It's powerful if you let it soak in.
Well, and I think that's why David is so, he has this personality. I'll talk to you since you're right here. You have this personality and you have this attraction because of that. Everybody wants what you have, and people are afraid, even though they're not facing prison. So it's this pull to their heart that you automatically do. And so just the more you speak and the more you share, there's just the more I think it cracks open and heals humanity, so thank you.
Well,
for
you want
that.
to
That's
hear
beautiful.
something even more? I mean, there's lots of amazing about you. It's why I feel like super honored that you're sitting here with us tonight. Super hard to wrap your brain around is the work you do with people that have had sexual offense charges against them. Like, that you work with those same people that hurt you. So you want to talk about that?
That's amazing. Let me just, before you start.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is, because I actually work in a nonprofit, and we have several gentlemen that are calling and writing letters from prison and saying, hey, I need housing. I have a sex offense from when I was 17 or when I was 18, and I can't get them housing. So it's very frustrating. And so I love that. I love that you're doing this. And after this, I'd like to talk to you more about how to, when you say that registry, it's just this blanket, horrific.
Abolish it.
Yeah, I agree. But yet, if you don't know about it, if you don't really know what goes on, you think, thank God we have it. But people don't want to know because it's too.
That's a lot. Touch on it if you can, but that's a lot.
What?
That conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me give some stats real quickly, about that. So 95% of sexual offenses that are happening right now are by people who have never been arrested for a sexual offense and are not on the registry.
Yes. Take that in.
So less than 5% of offenses are happening by people who've committed a sexual offense. Now, back in 1980 or in the 80s, there was an article in Psychology Today that said people who've committed sexual offenses are at the highest rate to reoffend, which is hogwash. So another thing that we have to think about is how many offenses happen by strangers. Less than 5%. So 95% of offenses, that sexual offenses, happen by somebody the individual knows. A lot of time it's somebody who's in some type of authority figure over them or a family member, So what we need to do is we need to take the money away from the registry and we need to put it towards prevention. We need to put it towards education and just knowing where somebody lives. What is that going to do? I mean, the thing it does is it allows vigilante individuals to go out and be vigilantes, and to harm and to kill folks that have committed these offenses in the past, even though they are most likely never going to commit another offense again. They have this big target on them. This is exactly what the scarlet letter is. Everybody knows. There's some states that will actually put the term sex offender on their license. Tell me that isn't more punishment, and people say that the registry is not punishment. If the registry wasn't punishment, how could somebody get a new charge and sentence? Here in Pennsylvania, if you don't register, you can get a sentence of 4 to 8 years. So, I mean, it's something that definitely has to be addressed and changed. But me working with this population was definitely a God thing, because when I graduated in 2017. Graduated May 6, 2017, started a job at New Person Ministries, which is a Christian reentry home in Lancaster, PA, that primarily works with people who have committed a sexual offense. But when I applied for the job just said a reentry position. And so I was like, okay, my wife had found it. And what's crazy is there were 3 different connections to Eastern University. So the executive director got his master's degree from Eastern. I was going to school with the executive director's brother, and the other program director of the Reading home, I was going to school with his daughter and met him a couple years previously, and we had a talk for 30 minutes. And so everything fell into place. And when I told my wife this, Jane was like, your life is butterflies and rainbows and roses. I was like, hey, that's favor, And so in the interview process, Jordan Kaufman, who's executive director, he's like, hey, are you going to be able to work with people who've committed sexual offenses? I was like, yeah, because I look at everybody as a new creature. I don't look at them as the offense that they committed. You know, Brian Stevenson had one of his most famous quotes is, "You're not as bad as the worst thing you've ever done." And so if I want people not to look at me as a murderer, I have to look at these people not as a sex offender, but as somebody who committed a sexual offense, you know, and it's always about taking the person away from the act or whatever they committed. So I don't want somebody to call me an inmate or a convict. I want them to call me a formerly incarcerated person or returning citizen, because that takes me away from that single act. You know, I committed my murder when I was 19 years old. Does that define me as I'm 41? That was 22 years ago. I'm not that same person, you know. I'm a different person. I'm a father now. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a nephew. I'm an uncle. You know, those are things that define me, not a act. And so that's how I was looking at these men. And this work was really, I looked at it as restorative justice, you know, because here I am, I'm able to help them heal. A lot of them would never be able to have access to the person that they have harmed. And so here I am, a victim by proxy to them, where we're able to help them heal. And another thing to realize is that some statistics go as low as 35, some as 75, is the amount of harm that these people have endured themselves. Most of these men had been sexually abused themselves. So if you are somebody that has been abused and you don't have healing, if you don't learn about it, if you don't have that counseling, you get this distorted thought process that this is how you show love. Whoever harmed them was in a position of authority. They were showing this person love when they were abusing them sexually in the person's mind as far as that child. So now they have this distorted thought process of what love is and how to show love. And so if that's not challenged, if that's not checked, they go through life thinking that's how they show love. And then when they're older, that's what they do. Now, I say that not to condone what they've done, but it gives you a better understanding of the work that needs to be done to prevent sexual abuse in the future. But I mean, it was an incredible experience working with these men and just seeing their change, you know, seeing them begin to look at themselves as a new creature, not as what society would label them, and look at them. And I mean, some of them are just thriving, you know, some are just getting by, you know, because of the difficulties, like you said, with housing, with jobs, you know. And that's the thing we have to do. We have to change the narrative around that to allow things to be better for them so they can get out and succeed. I mean, if we want them to get out and commit other offenses, we're going to have to register. We're going to have other things to make it like there are in Florida. You know, these homeless encampments are around with people who have committed sexual offenses. You know, and we're in essence making these encampments like leper colonies that happened in India when Mother Teresa was around.
Wow. And you are the perfect person to be that middleman to give permission for people to ask questions and to want to be curious, because you know, it's such a stigma. That's the number one stigma. And so there's not a lot of people that are especially someone like you who had experienced the abuse, and then to say, hey, wait, you know, show love and work with people that have committed those offenses. That's like the most beautiful thing ever.
And this is where my indignation comes in with this whole concept of allowing people to grow, like to heal and fix the thing that was hurting and wounded and broken in them so that they can be better people. In our society, so many people just want to keep knocking people down, judging them for the thing, like you said, the worst thing that maybe they've done, and hold that to them. And even when people are released, and all of the barriers, it's like, when is enough? Like, when can we get the attention off of, let's just level the playing field. They're bad people, so I must not be as bad, even though I have secrets or I have bad things I've done. It's this leveling thing in society. And so sometimes it feels small what we're doing on the Freedom Exchange, but then I also feel like I've got to start somewhere where we share these stories of loving people and giving space for people to grow and heal. I want that for myself. I've messed up and it's not been pretty, and I want people to let me grow and do better, but I still have people in my own life that are trying to keep me down for things that I've done. And that's where I get really frustrated in this whole conversation. Is it's easy to be like someone that's committed a sexual offense or someone that's taken a life or we can say all that stuff, but why don't we want our society to be better by people being better, like giving people the opportunity to be better instead of keeping them?
Well, it's the media too. You know, if you look on the front page of the USA Today, they say inmate, and then there's a guy that looks like hella scary, you know, and it's like, so I wrote them a letter. So, okay, now wait, that's not what all inmates look like, you know, if that's what we're going to call them. I mean, and so when there are stories of horrific things from sexual predators, I mean, there's or from murders, there are horrific stories, but those aren't all the stories. And so that's just like a regular person. There's, you know, there's people that have, you know, there's all the range is huge. And so let's not just sensationalize a certain point and then just wipe away everybody, you know, for that. So I appreciate what you do.
And I love that the conversation is moving. There's a lot of organizations that are moving to that place of, you know, seeking clemency and getting people's sentences re-looked at when laws have changed. You know, you think of pot laws and just things are changing. Let's go back and reevaluate these people and not just be done with them. And I'm appreciating that the conversation is going there more. And I have another question for you, but add whatever you want.
Yeah, with what you were talking about right there, you know, the Sentencing Project is doing amazing work. And one of their main things that they want to do is they're saying that 20 years, they want sentences capped to 20 years. So they want to do away with death penalty. They want to do away with life without parole. They want to do away with life sentences and virtual life sentences. And so, I mean, that's where I believe, you know, one of the things I get asked all the time is like when I'm speaking in a university, they'll ask, what would you change about the criminal justice system if you could only do one thing? I'm like, that's a hard question, you know, because there's so much to do. And I mean, the thing I typically say is cap everything at 20 years, you know, because when you look at criminal justice theories, you know, there's a theory that's called life course theory. And so, and one aspect of that, it talks about early onset offending. And what that means is you have individuals that commit an offense when they're young, either in their teens or early 20s. And they get arrested and there's some life event that happens that changes their trajectory. And this is where people get the term aging out of crime, you know, and that's what happens. I mean, here in Pennsylvania, the work I'm doing now with Straight Ahead organization is working to abolish life without parole and to create a geriatric medical parole. And in that, you know, we have 5,447 people in Pennsylvania who have a life without parole sentence. So one out of 10 people in the United States with a life without parole sentence are in Pennsylvania. And then our population that's over 55 is 10,600 people. And we have 39,000 people that are incarcerated. So over 25% of our prison population here in Pennsylvania are over 55.
Wow. So very, very likely to not reoffend because they've aged out of that mindset and they've matured and they've grown. And that's a really interesting concept I want people to think about. Is a lot of people do these offenses when they're so young and they're still developing their brain and figuring out who they are, and you age out. I think that's so important to realize that there's stats. It's a thing. People age out and they're not going to probably reoffend later. Well, it's important to think about it.
I mean, it's like a kid, you know, when you're 21, you get in a car, you party, you drink, you drive, you know, you give me the keys and you drive to another party, you know, it's like, that's what you do at that age. You don't do that at 50.
I hope not a lot of people do that.
They do. Well,
no, I know. Yeah. They do. And then just because I'm a vocab girl, because I'm newer in this world, the virtual life sentence you said.
Yeah, what is that?
So virtual life sentence are usually what they consider if you get like a 40-year sentence or longer. And it's a sentence where you have years. Like in Pennsylvania, you will get minimum and maximum sentence. So at times you get people that receive a 40 to 80-year sentence. So typically anything over 40 years, they consider a virtual life sentence because you're going to die in prison. You know, there's no way that you're going to get out. I saw the other day where somebody received a 275-year sentence. It's like, wow, why are you going to give somebody a 275-year sentence?
Why?
Because they're never going to be able to
Wow.
serve that whole time.
Yeah, and then if you just do a quick math, if you do the quick math, you know, what it costs is ridiculous. Wow, that's crazy.
And especially, you know, when you talk about what it costs, you know, um, individuals that I think it's like 50 or 55, everything doubles, you know. So say it costs $40,000 a year to house a regular incarcerated person. At 50, that doubles. And sometimes it goes to 3 or 4 times the actual cost. In Pennsylvania, 1 month of medication for people that are 55 and older is $3.2 million.
See, just that alone is staggering.
Well, and I think about all of the people that got released for COVID reasons, and they're on home confinement right now. And the conversation is maybe sending them back. And I'm like, they're working, they're paying taxes, they're paying mortgages, they've reconnected with their family, they're doing well. We're talking about sending them back just for punishment, not for rehabilitation, not for changing who they are. And then it costs us money again when they're actually productive members of society. That conversation also makes me very angry that that's a thing right now. I think about, David, so you served 13 and you could still be like, I understand there's a consequence to behaviors. Like I get that, but what would 10 more years, 20 more years in prison do for you? You know, would it have helped you or would it have harmed you? And why don't we look at it like that? Like, I know that Kendrick, who was on our last interview, and he said,
which I have his hat. Hold on, let me.
We're going to shout out to Kendrick.
Life in the Feds hat, Kendrick.
But he said he needed he served 17 years, and he said, I needed a decade to kind of get my mind right and change things around. I needed that decade, but I didn't need 33 years.
Yeah.
And he's on home confinement now. And I think sending him back, why? He's proving that he's a productive, warm, kind member of society.
And aged out, like you said.
Yes, and aged out. He's in his late 40s. So I lost my train of thought on that one.
I mean, I don't think any more time would have been beneficial. You know, I mean, really, probably after 5 years, I would have been okay to come out, you know, because I mean, my situation was a lot different, you know, because of the fact that we were protecting ourselves and trying to escape this situation that was happening to us, you know.
Yeah.
Do I feel like people should be getting 30 or 50 or 80-year sentences? No, you know, because that's silly, you know. What are these prisons called? Department of what?
Yeah, it's not correction.
Or rehabilitation.
They're called Department of Corrections in California, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So if you have a 75-year sentence, how much correction do you need to say, okay, I've been corrected, I've been rehabilitated? You do not need 75 years.
When is the scale tip where then it's just making things worse? It's mentally, physically, emotionally, it's just making everything worse after that point. So that's frustrating that we don't look at it as rehabilitation. Do you want to, what time is it? We're running short on time because we have a few more things we want to talk about, but do you want to give a little definitions about restorative and transformative justice?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about restorative and transformative justice, you know, these are the aspects that I think we really need to go to, because when we think about our criminal legal system, it just punishes, you know. The mode and method is retribution, deterrence, and incapacitation. So all they're focused on is punishment. Where when you think about restorative justice, you know, it's about healing. So is transformative justice, you know. And these are the two areas where the person that's harmed actually gets healed too. Because right now in our criminal legal system, you have the person that was harmed re-traumatized by having to go to trial and having to get in that witness box and relive what happened to them. Where transformative and restorative justice allows them to ask questions, allows them to have a conversation with the person that's harmed them to figure out why it happened. And then they come up with a restitution, which isn't
Mhm.
always about going to prison. You know, it could be community service hours, it could be this, that, you know, it doesn't always have to be prison. And that's what's so amazing about it, is that, you know, it's not this component of, okay, you're going to jail just because you did A, B, and C, you know. Common Justice, which is a program up in New York City that's run by this lady named Danielle Sarid, who wrote a book called Until We Reckon, is a perfect example of the success of a restorative justice program. Their recidivism rate is 2% of the people that go through their program. And typically, none of these youth go to prison. There's other restitution that they provide to allow that healing to take place, you know. And when you think about restorative and transformative justice, it's all about wholeness, it's about oneness, it's about unity. And that's what we need. I mean, our criminal legal system is not about healing, it's not about unity, it's not about bringing anybody together.
Yeah. The example of, it's not everybody has a mind of criminality. Like if we can look at the person, look at the situation, what brought you to the place to do the thing, you know, it's not that it's your habit, your way of thinking, your way of life. It was a thing that happened for these reasons. And let's take that into account when it's time for the consequence or for the rehabilitation or whatever it is. But we don't do that. We just say, you did this big, bad, scary thing, and here's the sentence.
Well,
and we miss all that in between of, this is a person, how can we help this person be better? And
yeah, because they're usually, it's there's a good book out called What Happened to You. So it's instead of like, why'd you do that or what'd you do, ask what happened to you. Generally, that's the number one shock I got in prison, was that most women in there have trauma and pain and hurt. And I was shocked at that. That was the first time I thought, wow, most women in here have trauma. So like, what happened to you? That would be just a poignant question to ask in order to heal.
And it immediately brings in some compassion and possibly empathy for somebody, because you're considering the bigger story. You're considering what happened to this person, not just this quick judgment on the act itself. Like take a minute and let's consider the humanity of the whole situation.
And we also got a little message, if you can speak up a little bit, David, just because it's a little
Our
soft.
Facebook Live has a comment that you're soft spoken.
Oh, sorry.
You've never been told that before, have you?
At times I have, you know, so but when you, with what you were talking about too, you know, one of the things that I say too is, you know, we all know and have heard about the school to prison pipeline. I say the pipeline that we don't talk about is the trauma to prison pipeline, you know, because as you were saying, I mean, there's stats out there that say 90% of women that are in prison have experienced certain types of trauma, you know. And if you take the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience Test, you know, I scored 10 out of 10, you know, and the thing there.
So mad that you got a 25-year sentence. Ugh.
But I mean, when people, a lot of people had that same reaction, you know. But something to think about too is like, when my brother and I committed this offense, it was 1999. So it was before sexual offenses, you know, really blew up, you know, and there was a lot of conversation around this. You know, you didn't have the Jerry Sandusky stuff, you didn't have any of these other high profile cases, you know, so it wasn't as prevalent, you know. It's more still that like white elephant in the room that people didn't talk about, you know. They knew it was there, but they didn't talk about it.
You think there's more leniency now that all of those really big names and big stories that come out, like this is a problem and this is happening, and a lot of young people are being affected by sexual offenses? Do you feel like it's there's more understanding now as it's.
I don't think so.
It's getting better. I mean, just look at what happened with Centoya Brown Long, you know, and her situation, you know, and the way that you had a lot of people that fought for her to get clemency, you know. So
Is she a
there's
story on Netflix? Is that where that is?
yeah, that's one of them. And then she also wrote a book, you know. The thing on Netflix she actually wasn't a part of.
Okay.
So, but I would definitely recommend her book, you know, and the experiences that she's had there, you know. And there was another young lady in Minnesota who had the similar stuff. Another lady in Ohio. So, it's being brought more to the light, you know, and there's a lot more grace, a lot more leniency, and a more open mind to that. And then, I mean, just the aspect of like the women that are being human trafficked, you know, and what they do to escape, you know, and like Christy was saying, as far as the trauma, you know, when you think about a lot of women that are in prison, what did they do to get there? You know, sometimes they were escaping abusive relationships and they committed a horrible offense, but it was done to escape.
Yeah, and, or a lot of times too, like you were saying about the masks, you know, you have a mask and you just automatically wear it and you can go in denial and do things you maybe wouldn't normally do if you were living your authentic self, but you can't do that because you're surviving. You know, I had a gal who was being abused by her father, who was a pastor, and she had me help her write a slip to see the psychologist in Carswell, Texas. And it literally came back. I saw it with my own eyes. It said no services for that. That was the response that she got. And so it's that I saw that time and time again in there, which was supposed to be a medical facility. So, you know, what do you do with that? It's like, it's pretty
Hopefully
traumatic.
we're moving in the right direction with that. We could never stop talking to you, David, at all. Are there? Not yet? Okay. We have a little thing we like to do.
Everyone's been commenting some great things about everything that you're saying.
We're trying to see if there's any, until we finish here in the next few minutes, everybody, if you have any questions, throw them out there. We're getting lots of comments, but do you want to do speed run?
Yes. Okay.
Do you want to do a little something fun?
Sure.
It's just really quick. So this is like speed run questions. So I'm just going to ask questions and you just have like a 1-word answer quickie and we'll just.
Or a couple, yeah.
Or a couple word. Okay. Who do you admire the most?
Brian Stevenson.
Good choice. Are you a morning or night person?
Night person.
Okay. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Outgoing, funny, and loving.
That's beautiful.
Good.
Let's see. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
11.
Oh,
yes.
Favorite kind of answer.
Love it.
What compliment do you give people the most?
One thing I do on Twitter a lot is, you know, I'm very encouraging to people that are like graduating or succeeding. So probably talking about just succeeding and just pressing on. And if somebody fails, just to get up, you know, and to let them know that failure doesn't define them.
I love that. And there is a big community of people that have been in prison on Twitter. One of my instructors made me go on Twitter for a class assignment. I was like, I have no time for this. And it was the best. That's how I met you. So there's so many, it's a great way to gradually reach out to people that have been through the same thing. You are really good at that, encouraging. So I appreciate that. Okay. What was your favorite commissary food?
Honey buns.
That's her answer.
No way.
It's not. Did you used to trade them? Oh, for like fruit.
Oh, I traded honey buns for fruit, but yeah.
You traded honey buns for fruit, man.
No.
Not in Alabama.
because they were so hard. I don't know if you guys had like a microwave to heat them up or anything. Did you?
I mean, ours were soft, and we would do this thing. We'd make a thing we called a doo-wop. So we would take cookies and we'd wet them to make it into like a pudding, mix that up, take a candy bar, break it up, mix it in, put it on the honey bun, and that would be dessert. So some people would call it a diabetic nightmare because of how much sugar it was.
So was that you doing your presses and then you go have a doo-wop for
Yeah.
reward? Okay, let's see. What is the first thing you think of in the morning?
Guy Joshua right now, because he's waking me up.
The first thing he hears.
Yeah.
Or
sure.
smells.
Let's see.
We have a question.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let's see. Oops.
Oh, we got to go back to that.
At least you know. What does that say? Oh, what's the commonplace? Is that for juveniles?
Yeah, it's in New York, and it's primarily for individuals that are under 18 that have committed different types of offenses. I don't remember exactly the extent that they go to as far as violent offenses, but yeah, it's in New York, and Daniel Sered, Sered, runs it. So definitely check it out. It's an amazing program.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. This is probably good for
that's
you
good.
because I'd love for you at the end just to reiterate the people, the advocacy work that you're doing for people.
I don't think we got into all the things you're doing. So,
and if you know how people can help, like how people that don't really know or have family members that are suffering, or like, hey, I want to do something. I have a cousin that's like, I want to do something, but I don't know where to start. If you have any thoughts on that.
If people want to get involved, I mean, there's a lot of different pen pal organizations that allow people to get involved, to write folks. Definitely reach out to Prison Fellowship. The Angel Tree is amazing. I mean, just seeing the families that are brought back together, or just or reconnected, or just the relationship that is strengthened by these gifts at Christmas and other events that Prison Fellowship does is amazing. I'd also say, a lot of places, they have different reentry organizations, or different organizations like that. Find out what they have in your city to help people that are coming home. We all know the African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. David Garlock's proverb is it takes a village for a returning citizen to be successful. So we, as individuals in our community, can be part of a person's village. So if you want to do something, a lot of times it's just walking along somebody that's coming out, and being there to encourage them, to uplift them, because a lot of times people who are in prison have never had anybody who has believed in them and who has walked with them and spoken life to them. So I think that's really important. As far as the different work that I'm doing, I am the Pennsylvania state organizer with Straight Ahead Organization. As I said, we're working to abolish life without parole and create a geriatric parole. I'm on the board of NARSAL, which is the National Association for Rational Sexual Offender Laws, and PARSAL, which is the Pennsylvania Association of Rational Sexual Offender Laws. And so we're working to abolish the registry and to allow those people who have committed sexual offenses to return home and to thrive in life, and not just have this scarlet letter and be running and fearful of receiving another sentence because of the registry. And I'm also on the advisory board of Eastern University's prison education program. So we're taking college level credit bearing courses to SCI Chester here in Pennsylvania to allow these men to get associate's degrees in prison, because education in prison is vital. It reduces recidivism by 43 to 48%. And it gives these men the social capital they need when they get out to succeed and to thrive in life.
And that's what we want. And there's that whole conversation about people getting education in prison, and that argument against allowing them to have that resource. But when you consider it can help our society to not have people continue to commit offenses, it can trickle down to their children and their loved ones around them, seeing them rise up.
And the community's children.
Yes.
I mean, people that have been in prison have been through some shit. And so there's a way to have, to give our experience into other people that haven't been through it, just to show other sides. And it's just, I think that's a cool thing. I have one question though, too. So what would you say to somebody if they say, my family member was sexually abused, and I do not want that guy or that woman to have the opportunities that you guys are talking about because my sister is in pain for all these years? What would you say?
I would tell them, that I understand. As somebody who was sexually abused, I get it, I understand that. But then I also would tell them, that it's about grace, it's about this person, committed this offense, but they have taken their time to work on themselves, especially in with that type of offense. You have to take a lot of programming while you're incarcerated before you go up for parole. And if you don't take the different classes, you're not going to make parole. So there's a lot of stringent things and classes and programs that this population has to take before they even are considered to make parole. And then when they're released, it's the same thing. They're in multiple groups, one-on-one groups, small groups, different things like this to help them process what they did and to make sure that they're not offending again, So there's a lot of things in place to make sure that they don't offend again, and I'd let them know that the main thing that this person's needs to do is just to seek a counselor, to work through that issue, because if she's still living in that fear, living in that place of not believing in somebody being able to be redeemed or restored, there's issues with her, and that she needs to go ahead and begin that healing process, and as she goes through that healing process, those thoughts will change. Now, I'm not saying that she's going to want to sit down and have dinner with the person, but that will change. I mean, I know from personal experience, I saw somebody in prison go through a restorative process. This gentleman had committed a rape. The woman that was raped reached out and wanted to go through a restorative process. As they walked through this,
Healing.
they became friends.
Yeah, I can.
This woman was visiting him once a month, and they became really close friends. And that's what's so powerful about restorative justice.
Gosh, why don't we do that? This has been such an important conversation. I mean, I have just so much joy in my heart that we got to do this, but I also feel like this was such an important conversation for people to hear and to share all that you're doing. And this, it's hard for some people to imagine that kind of grace and that kind of love for people after going through the things that you've gone through. So we're cheering you on, and we appreciate you. And I'm so honored that we got this time with you, knowing your schedule and knowing all the work you're doing. It's, I mean, such a huge gift to us. So I thank you, David, and I can't wait to just continue to follow you and watch all the amazing stuff you're doing and learn from you. I'm learning a lot from you. You don't know this, but when I am all over your social media and I'm watching everything you're doing and things you're posting, I'm learning from you, and I appreciate that a lot, because you're doing the work, and that's who I'm drawn to. And I think people hear the truth, and it's interesting and it's attractive to hear it. Do you have a question?
I have one last question real quick. Sorry, we're going to keep you here. We're going to be like, okay, let's see. Hold on.
It's like, what time is it?
I know. It's
late there.
Okay. Someone wants to know if you only work with people in the state of Pennsylvania and only state people in prison, or do you work with federal inmates all over the country?
As far as what? As far as
Any like
Anything
in
you're
regard to
doing.
reentry or restorative justice?
I mean, primarily my main job, my 9 to 5 is here in Pennsylvania as far as individuals with life without parole. But NARSAL works with folks all over the country. So if there's people throughout the country who have been charged with a sexual offense, yeah, we will work with anybody there.
Okay.
Good.
And then what's the name of the organization you said North?
NARSAL, NARSOL.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right, we will let you go and get some sleep. So thank you.
Go snuggle with that little guy.
He's actually asleep right now, so that'll come at like 6 a.m. when he wakes me up.
Good. We appreciate you, David.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I appreciate y'all and thank you for having me on. And I'm hoping that you guys continue to just be an encouragement and inspiration to people and challenge them to get involved and to have a different mindset and thought process around those who are formerly incarcerated.
Deal.
Sounds
Doing it.
good.
Okay. Thanks, David. Have a good
Thank
night.
Y'all take care.
You too. Good night.